In the heart of Ashikuma, a small village cradled by rolling green hills and golden fields of maize, life followed a rhythm as steady as the beating of a drum. Children chased chickens through dusty lanes, while women pounded yam and gossiped under the shade of sprawling baobab trees. The scent of roasting plantains mingled with the earthy aroma of rain-soaked soil, and the chatter of the market square filled the air every morning. Though simple, the village was a tapestry of culture, woven together by shared stories, songs, and traditions passed down through generations. Here lived Zainab, a young woman known as much for her kindness as for her nimble fingers, which spun the finest cotton thread in the entire region. Despite her humble beginnings, she held her head high, often offering a warm smile even when life's hardships weighed heavily upon her shoulders. She was the eldest of 4 siblings and had become the family's pillar after her father's untimely passing. Her mother, Amina, was frail but wise, often guiding Zainab with words of encouragement and gentle reprimands. The villagers adored Zainab not only for her craft but also for her heart. She was the first to share food during a lean season and the last to take when times were plentiful. Her neighbours often marvelled at her resilience. "That girl's spirit burns brighter than the village lantern," they would say. Among her closest relationships was her younger brother, Malik, a mischievous teenager with a penchant for trouble. Malik's antics often made Zainab's days harder, but she loved him fiercely, seeing in him the spark of potential that others overlooked. Then there was old Mama Kofi, the village herbalist, who had taken Zainab under her wing after her father's death. Mama Kofi's tales of ancient spirits and forgotten curses often filled Zainab's evenings, though Zainab never took them too seriously. But life was about to change in ways no one could foresee. For Zainab's gentle hands, accustomed to spinning cotton and mending tears, was soon to wield a power so fierce and uncontrollable that it would reshape not only her destiny, but the very future of Ashikuma itself. It began with a disagreement, small as a spark, but one that would soon blaze out of control. Malik had been caught again, this time stealing a handful of yams from the market square. The angry shouts of the stall owner echoed through Ashikuma, followed closely by the sight of Malik being dragged home, his face streaked with tears and defiance. "Your brother is a menace," the vendor bellowed at Zainab's doorstep. "You think kindness can excuse his behaviour? You'll ruin this family if you don't get him in line." Zainab's cheeks burned with shame as the neighbours gathered to witness the commotion. Her mother, Amina, too weak to rise from her mat, could only groan in frustration. Once the vendor stormed off, Zainab turned to Malik, her voice quivering with anger and disappointment. "What were you thinking, Malik?" she cried, clutching his arm. "We have little as it is, and now you've shamed us." I was hungry," Malik shot back, yanking free of her grip. "I'm tired of watching Mama starve while you give away everything we have to others. You think the villagers care about us? They don't." His words stung deeper than she cared to admit, but Zainab had no chance to respond. From behind her, a sharp voice cut through the air. "You should have let the boy be punished, Zainab." It was Aunt Hadiza, Amina's younger sister, whose presence always seemed to cast a shadow over their home. She stepped inside without invitation, her eyes narrowing as they swept over the modest room. "He'll learn nothing if you keep coddling him, but that's your problem. Too soft, too giving. You need to be harder, or this family will crumble." Hadiza was a stark contrast to Zainab, sharp-tongued and severe, with little patience for the kindness that defined her niece. While she had stepped in to help after Zainab's father's passing, her intentions were far from pure. She coveted the small plot of land left to Amina and saw Zainab's struggles as a weakness ripe for exploitation. "Perhaps it's time we discussed other solutions," Hadiza said, her voice dropping into a calculated tone. "There's a trader in the next town looking for a wife. He's wealthy, Zainab. He could solve all your problems." Zainab froze, her heart thundering in her chest. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice trembling. "I am. A girl like you has little else to offer. Think of your family. Or are you too proud to make sacrifices for them?" Hadiza's words ignited a storm inside Zainab. She wanted to scream, to push back against the injustice, But something else happened instead. Her hands began to burn. At first it was a subtle warmth, as if she'd been holding them too close to the cooking fire. But then it grew unbearable, the heat searing her palms. She gasped and stumbled back, clutching her hands to her chest. Flames erupted from her fingertips, wild and uncontrollable, licking the air like living creatures. The room descended into chaos. Malik yelped and leapt away, while Hadiza's sharp tongue gave way to terrified shrieks. Amina, frail as she was, managed only a whispered prayer. What is this?" Zainab stammered, staring at her hands in disbelief. Hadiza's fear quickly turned to suspicion. "Witchcraft," she hissed. "You brought a curse upon this house." But Zainab knew it was something else. Something ancient and powerful awakening within her. The flames, though fierce, did not harm her skin. Instead, they seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if they had been waiting for this very moment to emerge. In that instant, Zainab's life, once as steady as the rhythm of Ashikuma's drum, had been forever changed. The fire in her hands was both a gift and a curse, one that would ignite a journey filled with danger, discovery, and an unyielding fight for her family's survival. Zainab's days after the fire in her hands were anything but ordinary. Word of the strange event spread quickly throughout Ashikuma, and her once quiet existence began to unravel in ways she couldn't have foreseen. Her hands burned uncontrollably at night, their flames dancing through the dark like an ominous warning. In the daylight, she would keep them hidden beneath cloth or in water, but no matter how hard she tried, the fire would always return. The villagers, initially curious, soon grew fearful, and it was Hadiza's whispering that sparked the flame of suspicion. "She's cursed," Hadiza told anyone who would listen. "That girl is a witch, using dark forces to get what she wants. Now it's clear that those flames are a sign, a warning to us all." Soon, Ashikuma's elders summoned Zainab for an emergency meeting. Their judgment was swift and harsh. "She is no longer welcome in this village," the village chief announced, his voice heavy with regret. "The fire in her hands is unnatural, a sign that she has made a pact with spirits. We cannot allow such evil to infect our home." Zainab's heart sank. She'd always lived by the village's code, helping neighbours in need, sharing what little she had, and listening to the elders' stories. To be branded a witch was a betrayal that struck at the very core of her being. "You have to leave," the chief said, not a hint of kindness in his eyes. "If you do not, you'll bring ruin to us all." Malik, who had been avoiding the consequences of his own reckless actions, stood beside Zainab as she was led away. He had hoped that his sister's powers would be a blessing, a way to bring prosperity to their family. But now, with the village turning against them, he could see the depth of their misfortune. "I'll go with you," Malik said quietly, pulling at her sleeve. "We'll figure this out together." But Zainab's eyes were full of sorrow as she shook her head. "No, Malik, you stay. You need to learn from your mistakes. This is not your fight." And so, with a heavy heart, Zainab left Ashikuma. Days turned into weeks as Zainab wandered from village to village, her hands an uncontrollable curse that she struggled to hide. She sought solace in the wilds, deep within the forest that bordered the village, where the whisper of the wind in the trees was her only company. She tried to control the flames, to make sense of them, but they seemed to have a will of their own. There were nights when the fire threatened to consume her, and days when the heat threatened to burn her alive. Despite the struggle, Zainab held on to her belief that she was not evil, that she was not the thing the villagers feared. Her heart remained pure, and she refused to let her gifts be twisted into something dark. It was in one of these quiet moments that she encountered a stranger, an old woman draped in colourful fabrics, her face lined with wisdom. "You carry the fire of the gods," the woman said, eyeing Zainab's glowing hands with an understanding that sent a chill down her spine. "But fire is a difficult master. It will burn you unless you learn to command it." The old woman, whose name was Mama Amina, led Zainab to a hidden sanctuary deep within the forest. It was a place where the elements were respected, where the land and spirits were in harmony. Mama Amina had lived among the elements for years, and she had seen others like Zainab, those who carried the power of fire, water, or wind. She offered Zainab the guidance she needed to learn control, to turn the fire into a force that could heal and protect rather than destroy. However, Zainab's peace was short-lived. Word spread that Zainab was still alive, and with it came new threats. Hadiza had used her influence to rally neighbouring villages, urging them to rid themselves of the girl with the cursed fire. "If we don't act quickly," she warned, "this fire will spread. It's not just her, it's the entire bloodline of witches she comes from." One evening, as Zainab practiced her newfound skills under Mama Ajher Swam, Mina's watchful eye, a group of armed men arrived. They had been sent by the neighbouring village chiefs, their orders clear: capture Zainab, bind her, and bring her to the elders. The first clash was brutal. Zainab's flames lashed out instinctively, but she had learned little control. They roared wildly, scorching trees and turning the air thick with smoke. Mama Amina was quick, guiding her through the motions and teaching her to quell the fire, to focus. But there was no escaping the men's approach. They were relentless, and Zainab's strength was waning. With every strike, she could feel her energy being drained, her fire dimming as if the world itself was trying to extinguish her. "You cannot run from your fate, girl," one of the men shouted, his voice filled with venom. "The flames you carry belong to the gods, but they will consume you unless you submit to their will." Zainab, battered and exhausted, stood tall. Her heart was heavy, not with fear, but with the injustice of it all. Why was she being punished for something she couldn't control? Then, in the midst of the chaos, a familiar voice broke through the haze. "Stop!" Malik's voice rang out. "She's not what you think." The young man rushed into the clearing, breathless, and his eyes locked with Zainab's. "I've seen the fire in her hands, and it's not evil. It's a gift. She's my sister, and I stand with her." Malik's words fell heavy in the silence that followed. The men hesitated, confused by the defiance in his voice, but the elder who led the group was not so easily swayed. "She's a danger to all of us," the elder snapped, "a danger that must be eliminated." But as he raised his hand to strike, something unexpected happened. The flames in Zainab's hands flared once more, stronger and brighter than ever before. She was no longer afraid, no longer unsure. She had spent so long fighting against the fire, but now she embraced it. The fire did not lash out at the men. Instead, it twisted into intricate patterns in the air, a show of power and beauty. Zainab's heart surged with newfound strength. She was no longer the girl running from the curse of her hands. She was the woman who would control it. And as she lowered her hands, she faced her attackers with unwavering resolve. "Leave us in peace," Zainab said, her voice firm. "I won't be your victim anymore." It was a night like any other, save for the heavy silence that hung over the forest. Zainab sat alone by the edge of a still pond, her hands resting quietly on her lap. The fire, once wild and unruly, had dimmed in her soul. The weight of the struggles, the betrayals, and the relentless fear of the villagers had finally taken its toll. Her brother Malik had insisted on staying with her, but Zainab had sent him away to visit their mother. She wanted to be alone, to gather her thoughts and try to make sense of the chaos that had become her life. She longed for the days when she'd simply been a weaver, a daughter, a sister, not a girl marked by a curse that burned within her. The events that had transpired over the past weeks had left her exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The flames that had once felt like an awakening now seemed more like a burden. She had fought against them, learned to control them, but every time she thought she had a handle on her gift, the fire would rise again, wild and unpredictable. And with each eruption, the village's fear of her grew. Even Malik, in his defiance, couldn't shield her from the whispers of the village elders. It wasn't just fear, though, it was betrayal. Zainab had learned that her own aunt, Hadiza, had orchestrated the village's decision to cast her out, with each visit to the neighbouring villages. Hadiza had fed lies about Zainab's powers. poisoning the minds of those who had once been her friends. Hadiza had manipulated them all, using the fear of the unknown to solidify her own position in Ashikuma. And now, there was no place for Zainab to return to, no home, no refuge. As she sat beside the pond, Zainab felt an overwhelming sense of loss. The fire in her hands flared weakly, but she made no move to stop it. She let the flames curl around her fingertips, not caring if they burned her. "I'm a monster," she whispered to the night. The words felt foreign, but they hung in the air, heavy with truth. She had been cast out as a witch, abandoned by her people, and even now, the fire inside her seemed to mock her. She had tried so hard to be good, to be worthy of the love and trust of those around her, but it was never enough. Tears stung her eyes, and for the first time in ages, she let herself weep. She wept for her father, for her mother, for the life that had been stolen from her. She wept for the girl who once wove dreams into the threads of her cloth, and for the fire that had turned her world into ash. And as she cried, the fire in her hands flickered and died. But in that quiet, lonely moment, something unexpected happened. A small rustling in the bushes caught her attention. Startled, Zainab jumped to her feet, her hands instinctively flaring with light. But as she looked closer, she saw a figure emerging from the shadows. It was Mama Amina. The old woman had followed her, sensing her despair. She had not come to teach or to demand anything, but simply to sit with her, to remind her that even in the darkest moments there was still light. "You're not alone, Zainab," Mama Amina said softly, sitting beside her. "Not in this world, not in the next." Zainab wiped her tears away, feeling both embarrassed and grateful for the presence of the older woman. Her heart ached with a reminder that despite everything, there were still people who cared for her. "You've been so strong," Mama Amina continued, her voice calm and steady. "You fought against the world, against your own power, but now it's time to stop fighting and to embrace what you are." Zainab shook her head. "I don't know if I can. I've lost everything. I don't even know who I am anymore." "You are the fire," Mama Amina said, her gaze unwavering. "It's a part of you, just as the earth, the air, and the water are. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. But you can learn to wield it. And when you do, you will change the world." Zainab felt a stirring in her chest, a small flicker of hope that she hadn't realized she still carried. She'd been so focused on the destruction, on the fear and the isolation, that she had forgotten what the fire had once symbolized: power, strength, and the ability to create. She had let the flames consume her, but now she realized that they didn't have to be her enemy. "But how?" Zainab whispered, the question heavy with the weight of her doubt. Mama Amina smiled, her eyes twinkling with a secret only time could reveal. "You already know the answer, child. The fire is inside you. You've always known how to control it. You just need to believe in yourself." For the first time in weeks, Zainab allowed herself to believe, not just in the fire, but in her own strength. It was a fragile hope, something that could easily be extinguished by doubt, but it was enough to spark something within her. "I will learn," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I will learn to control it. I won't let it destroy me anymore." As the fire flickered back to life in her hands, a new determination burned in her heart. She would not let the flames define her. She would define them, and she would return to Ashikuma, not as a broken girl, but as the woman she was always meant to be. The turning point came not in the form of victory, but in the quiet realization that the power to change was within her all along. The flames that had once been a symbol of destruction would soon become a beacon of hope. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting a pale light over Ashikuma, the village that had once been her home, the place where Zainab had learned to weave, to care for her family, and to live. But now it felt like a distant memory, one tangled with fear and rejection. She'd spent weeks in the wilderness, far from the scornful eyes of the villagers, learning to control the fire inside her. Her bond with the flames had transformed from a curse into a power, one she was finally ready to wield. Zainab stood at the edge of the village, her heart pounding. Her thoughts raced. Hadiza's lies had poisoned everyone against her, but now it was time to show them the truth. That she was not the witch they feared, but a woman of strength. Her return was not an apology or an act of submission. It was a declaration that the fire would no longer control her, and that her destiny would be forged by her own hands. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her feet firm against the dirt path that led to the heart of Ashikuma. Inside the village square, a crowd had gathered, murmuring among themselves. The village elders, perched on their high stools, were deep in conversation when Zainab entered the clearing. At first, the whispers began, fearful and judgmental, but Zainab didn't falter. Her hands, now steady and sure, were held out before her, the fire flickering beneath her skin like a living, breathing force. She could feel it, the fire pulsing in her blood, ready to respond to her command. The moment she stepped into the light, the crowd fell silent. They had expected the fire to consume her, as it had so many times before, but instead, Zainab stood tall, unwavering, her eyes locked with the elders. Hadiza was among them, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What is this? What has she come to do?" she whispered to one of the men beside her. But Zainab didn't respond to her aunt's venom. Instead, she addressed the elders, her voice strong, filled with a newfound purpose. "I am Zainab, daughter of Ashikuma. I have come to show you who I am, not the monster you believed, but a woman of fire and strength." Her words hung in the air, charged with energy, and before anyone could react, Zainab raised her hands. The flames burst forth in a dazzling display, lighting up the night sky. The fire didn't burn or destroy. It swirled around her like a protective shield, glowing in patterns that mesmerized and awed the crowd. The villagers recoiled at first, but as they watched, the flames began to take shape. It was not a raging inferno, but a graceful dance of light, a symbol of life, rebirth, and healing. It was as if Zainab had woven the flames into something new, a testament to her mastery, her control over the power that had once threatened to ruin her. Hadiza stepped forward, her voice sharp with accusation. "Witchcraft!" she spat. "This is an abomination!" But Zainab's gaze did not waver. "No, aunt, this is me. This is my gift. Not a curse, but a part of who I am." And then, in a moment that caught everyone by surprise, an unexpected figure emerged from the crowd. Malik. He stepped up beside Zainab, his face set with determination. "You have wronged her," he said, his voice steady and clear. "All of you." His words were met with shocked gasps. "Zainab is not a witch. She is the fire of this village, the very spirit that will save it. You cast her out because of fear, but it is your fear that has caused the harm." Zainab's heart surged with pride. For so long she had feared she was alone in her fight. But here, standing beside her, was her brother, the one person who had always believed in her. Hadiza's face twisted in fury, her fingers clenched into fists. "You dare defy me, boy? You've been led astray by this cursed woman. She will bring ruin to us all." But Malik didn't flinch. "You were the one who betrayed her, aunt. You poisoned the village with lies to serve your own greed. This is your doing, not hers." The crowd shifted, murmuring among themselves, and in that moment, something shifted within them. The fear that had clouded their judgment began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of understanding. The villagers began to question their blind obedience to Hadiza, to wonder if they had been wrong all along. And then came the most unexpected revelation. The village chief, the one who had cast Zainab out, stood. His face was grave as he looked at Zainab, his voice somber. "You have shown us the truth, Zainab. We were wrong. But there is something else we have overlooked." He paused, glancing at Hadiza, who was now silent, her face pale. "Hadiza's lies have poisoned this village for too long. She has used her position to manipulate us, and we will not allow it to continue. She is no longer welcome here." The crowd stirred, and Hadiza's eyes widened in shock. Her betrayal had been exposed. Her influence, which she had once wielded so easily, crumbled in an instant. Zainab felt the fire within her settle, a calm power that radiated from her core. She had won, not through force, but through truth and love. With Hadiza's influence stripped away, Zainab turned to the village, her voice calm but firm. "I am not the enemy," she said. "I am the flame that will rebuild what was broken. Together, we can heal this village, and I will help guide it, not as a witch, but as a woman of the fire." The flames around her danced higher, glowing in the night, a symbol of her promise. And in that moment, the conflict was resolved. Zainab had not only regained her place in Ashikuma, but she had reclaimed her power and her dignity. Her fire, once feared, was now a beacon of hope and renewal. Life in Ashikuma slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Zainab, once the girl feared for the fire within her, had become a beacon of hope for the village. The elders, who had once condemned her, now sought her counsel. She taught them how to respect the natural elements, how to live in harmony with the world around them, and how to balance the power they had once feared. The fire, once destructive and wild, had become a source of growth and renewal, much like Zainab herself. Zainab's life took on a peaceful rhythm. She continued her work as a weaver, but now the cloth she created was infused with a deeper meaning, each thread reflecting the strength and resilience she had found in herself. Her fire, under control, no longer threatened the people she loved. Instead, it became a symbol of her courage and the quiet strength that had always been within her. One warm afternoon, as the village gathered for a festival, Malik stood beside her, his arm resting comfortably on her shoulder. Together they watched the flames of the fire pit dance into the sky. A spectacle of light and warmth. It was a reminder of everything they had endured and overcome. "I'm proud of you," Malik said quietly, his voice filled with admiration. "You've made a home for us again." Zainab smiled, her heart full. She had come to realize that home wasn't just a place. It was the people who believed in you, who stood by you through your darkest moments. And now, her family, all those who had supported her, was whole again. As for Hadiza, her fate was far different. Exposed for her lies and manipulation, she found herself ostracized by the very village she had once controlled. The elders, once under her influence, no longer trusted her. The power she had sought to seize crumbled, and her attempts to regain favor were met with resistance. For the first time in her life, Hadiza had to face the consequences of her actions, a humbling experience that taught her the weight of greed and deceit. Though she left Ashikuma in shame, it was clear that her influence would never return. Zainab did not rejoice in her aunt's downfall, but she understood the lesson that came with it. Hadiza had let fear drive her, and in the end, it was her own fear that led to her downfall. But Zainab's resilience, her unwavering belief in the goodness of her heart, had ultimately won the day. As the years passed, Zainab's reputation grew, not as the girl with the fire, but as the woman who had turned it into a force for good. She married a man who valued her strength, not her fire, but her spirit. Together, they built a life based on mutual respect, love, and the quiet understanding that all things must be balanced. Her days were filled with laughter, weaving, and teaching the next generation the lessons she had learned. The story of Zainab and Ashikuma reminds us that resilience in the face of adversity can transform even the darkest situations. It teaches that true strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but from confronting them with honesty, kindness, and the courage to stand firm. The fire within Zainab, once feared and misunderstood, became a symbol of hope because she learned to wield it with wisdom and love. As the old proverb goes, fire that is controlled can warm a home, but fire that is untamed can burn it down. This story shows us that while we may face moments of doubt or hardship, it is the way we respond to them, with grace, perseverance, and an open heart, that shapes our destiny. Zainab's journey proves that good things come to those who remain true to themselves, who rise above fear and negativity, and who understand that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. Zainab's journey reminds us all that even in our darkest moments, there is hope. Through resilience, self-discovery, and the courage to face our fears, we can transform the challenges we encounter into sources of strength. We hope this story inspires you to embrace your own fire, whatever it may be, and use it to light the way forward. What challenges have you overcome in your own life, and what lessons did you learn along the way? We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments. Remember, your experiences can inspire others. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of transformation. Let us know where you're watching from. We're building a community of resilient hearts, and we want you to be a part of it. Stay strong, stay kind, and never underestimate the power of your own fire.